Hello, hello. So, the Lord is asking me to elaborate a little bit more on the message that I put out yesterday in regards to what, like, humans and government and people in positions of power have been doing behind the scenes for years, okay? I'm not getting so much that, uh, like, Trump is doing this, right, as we speak, since he's been reelected. Maybe a little bit in the previous term. I'm not really sure. I'm more or less speaking on behalf of Canada, right? Now, I do see and follow like a little bit of what's happening in the States when it comes to what they're doing and stuff. And that leads me into present day. So, when I made yesterday's message, I was speaking a lot mostly from the past, right? That was what the agenda was in the past. But that it was, even though it was corruption that was leading to that in the first place, the Lord allowed it because we were too overpopulated, right? We were. And so whether people had to be removed by accident, suicide, murder, natural cause, whatever it may be, that happened, right? It's just life, death is a part of life, right? So, I mean, right? But that mission or agenda has slowed down, if not stopped altogether, when it comes to the States with Trump, right? And this is why I say that he's a chosen one, is because I see this as a lot that it has to do with more so like maybe the Biden administration and things like that, and even Obama and things like that. Like I say, I this is what the Lord's telling me, but I feel kind of nervous saying too much because I'm not an American citizen, right? So I only know what I see broadcasted to me through media. But I know that where I'm at here in Canada, we have had the Liberal government in power for the last over 10 years, and this has been their agenda in the past, in the present, and the future, okay? Now, because a lot of the Lord is saying the word calling, okay, hallelujah. They wanted to basically call people, right? And a lot of it was the States and Canada alike, but we have to understand that Canada and the States have totally different governments, okay? That's one thing I do know. Over here in Canada, there's a major corrupt agenda that's been going on, not just with our leader, as in Trudeau and Carney, but with the political party in general, which is the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party is the ones who are not, like, basically the Liberal Party in Canada is not for God at all. They're the complete opposite of for God. They want to remove all religion. They want there to be transgender rights. They want there to be no bullying or hate when it comes to same sex anything. They want it to just be a free, open country. They want mass immigration. They want to remove doctors so that people can't receive medical care. They want to raise the prices of foods and shrink the food so that you literally get a half a box of cereal and you have to pay $10 for it, and 98% of in it is chemicals. And then when you do get sick and you have some sort of a disease or sickness, then they want to have a shortage of doctors so that you can't get any help, so that you can't get testing, blood tests, and things like this. There's waiting lists of like 1 to 2 years just to get x-rays and MRI scans and things like this, right? You know what I'm saying? Over here in Canada is very corrupt. Now, the Lord was showing me that it was very similar at one point in the States. Now, I understand that today I'm not trying to pamper the States and say that everything is perfect, but what I will say today and have said already before is that the States is fortunate to have a better leader in Donald Trump than we have over here in Canada. I know that it may look a certain way, like media puts a certain facade out about Canada in the media, but as a born and bred Canadian citizen that's lived here for 4 decades, I'm telling you that that's not accurate, right? I've seen Canada completely shift and change in the last like 15-ish years, and this is why. And it's because they have this major agenda, and the Lord is telling me that it's still like in mind, like it's still under brewing behind the scenes in play as we speak. It's just the Lord has shut down a lot of it. The Lord did allow it for a temporary amount of time because, like I said, we had become overpopulated, right? And that's what I talked about in yesterday's word, how the Lord did work in partnership with individuals to do this, whether they believe in God or not, whether they think that's possible or not. Man thinks that they move mountains, but God moves mountains and allows man to think he did it, type of a thing, okay? And unfortunately, because of that, this is what causes man to have the overinflated ego and pride and get drunk on power, so to speak, is because of that. The fact that, like I said in yesterday's word, they come up with this mass plan of corruption, just kind of like World War III, World War II. Hitler had a plan during World War II of mass global domination, and it happened, right? It happened. He did do what he did. He did set up concentration camps. He did have mass genocide and take out massive amounts of Jewish people. It happened. We had the Holocaust, right? God could have intervened, but he didn't. So God allowed the culling and genocide of the Jews to happen, you see? And God is saying that's different at that time. And that time it was because it was there was a prophetic, biblical, like prophecy must come to pass type of a reason there, okay? But with now, it's not that. They're trying to do this to people just in general. It's basically like survival of the fittest. Like, it's not targeting any one particular, area specifically. It's just if you make it through, great. If you don't, you don't. C'est la vie. Like, it is what it is, This is the agenda they had pushed through. And so the Lord was asking me to be a little more clarifying about it. So I'll give you examples of what he was showing me. So it all connects the dots. So he was telling me yesterday and even today is that, so if you upraise the chemicals of food, right, then it raises the chance that people are going to get sick with something, right? It also raises the chance that a woman is going to conceive and give birth to a child with possible, issues, right? No different than autism or any other disabilities or things like this because of what she ingested in the womb. Now, we see that recently on that note, Donald Trump has been talking about the Tylenol thing. I can't say if taking Tylenol during pregnancy would give autism or not, but what my point in that to say is that at least he's trying to suggest to his citizens, his female and / pregnant citizens, not to take it when they're pregnant. And people like to misunderstand and misread Donald Trump on purpose. And I've noticed that. And I'm not here to sing his praises or anything, but let's be real. If I was talking to you and I said to you, hey, I've read this article that says that taking Tylenol when pregnant could possibly lead to autism, you'd be like, oh, really? Weird. Oh, that's, who knew, or maybe you'd be inquisitive or do some research. When Donald Trump says it, every single person is like, he's trying to tell us how to live our life. He's not a doctor. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like he can't say anything. Like, if he says, I love America, the citizens and country is the best, everyone's going to sit there and say, he's lying, he's being facetious, he's being sarcastic, he doesn't mean that, he doesn't love us, he's the worst leader ever. But then if he says, I hate America, it's the worst country ever, and I don't like the people, then they're going to say, see what a terrible, horrible leader he is? We should have never elected him. Like, he can't win. He's in a lose-lose situation, right? I feel like the Biden administration could have known somehow, some way that Tylenol was bad to take during pregnancy, and instead of taking the backlash of putting the warning out or putting themselves in a spotlight on it, they would have just not said anything, right? They would have maybe had a meeting amongst themselves and said, oh, this might go bad for us, or this might bode bad for the, for the office, so let's not even announce this. And they would have kept it to themselves. And what if there is some truth to the statement? So whether it's true or not, whether it's absolute facts or not, is irrelevant. The point is that Trump didn't do anything bad, wrong, or negative or evil by going and trying to say, hey, try not to take Tylenol when you're pregnant. And as somebody who's had 2 healthy pregnancies already in my life, I agree with that statement. If you really need to take Tylenol for some reason, whether if you're sick or something, yes, and the doctor says to do it, then go ahead, right? But yes, there's probably some risks. I believe that really taking nothing when pregnant is the best measure. I really think that that's a time, because 99% of everything can cross the placenta. And I find it strange that Tylenol is a drug, right? Whether it's a safe drug or not is irrelevant. The point is, it is a drug, it's a pain reliever. And so, even people with like Ray's syndrome and stuff, they can't take it. And so, and it can cause liver issues and stuff. And there, if you read a Tylenol pamphlet, even going back to the 90s, 30, 40 years ago, it comes with some warnings. There are people that are allergic to it and can have side effects and things like this, right? It's not like you're taking a Flintstones vitamin. Like, there's stuff, it's still a pain reliever. And so to sit and say that it would just be absolutely perfect fine, it wouldn't do a bit of anything to anybody, that's not true. Like, I know even when my little brother was like 3 or 4 years old, he was sick, and my mom gave my little brother Tylenol, and he had an allergic reaction to it. He broke out in hives and he was sweating like he was sick, and he couldn't take Tylenol for a few years. And she's lucky because he could have actually had anaphylactic shock and died, right? And there's a warning label on it that says it, and that happened back in like 1988. So, you know, it's definitely to try to suggest and say that Tylenol is just super safe and just go full blown. I don't think that that's smart. I think that's foolish. And I think that when you're pregnant, they even tell you not to eat fish because of the high mercury levels and stuff, right? So it's definitely, when a woman's pregnant, is a more delicate and tender time. And so I agree with Trump's statement, is that you should watch of what you take. And I watched him say this statement, and none of what he said or how he said it was wrong. He never once told anybody, hey, don't take this will kill you. He never said that. He just simply said, you know, try not to take it if you can help it. I mean, if you have to take it, then take it. Yes, of course. But, you know, if you can help it, if you can manage with the pain. And I know what he means. There were times when I was pregnant with both my kids where I had a headache or something and I wanted to reach for pain pill, and I didn't. I purposely just wrote it out and toughed it out. You know what I mean? Because of the fact that I was pregnant. And it's just like, when you're breastfeeding, yes, you could technically drink, but they tell you to pump the milk out, right? Why do they tell you to do that? So that your baby is receiving clean milk. Otherwise, if you drink and you go and breastfeed your baby, 6 hours later, your baby can get alcohol in their, you know, in their bloodstream from your breast milk. It's just common sense here, right? But if Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, said this, everyone would be like, oh, wow, that's true. We should really consider that. Makes sense to me. But because Trump says it, it's a big, huge issue. And so this is why I say that Trump is a chosen one, is because right now at this time, only chosen ones are getting belittled, bullied, and mocked for what they say and talk about. I mean, look what all happened with Charlie Kirk, right? The people, including myself, it's the same with myself. I mean, I don't have a lot of subscribers or anything, but I find that when I come with these messages of truth that the Lord himself gives me, these aren't opinions, these are the factual facts that the Lord shows me, I lose subscribers. And I know it's because I'm talking about Donald Trump in a favorable way, and I'm not jumping on the bandwagon to boycott him. But the facts of the matter are is that, first of all, he's not doing anything to boycott. He hasn't said or done anything wrong. And secondly, the Lord is leading me to say what I say. So it's not even that people are coming to receive my opinions. Like, the message I give today or yesterday from the Lord is the same as the message I gave last month and the message I'll give next month. It's all from the same source, right? So I'm going to say that if you feel the need to unsubscribe or feel offended or bothered because of anything I say in my message, then by all means, you know, by all means, go ahead. I'm not going to, you know, sugarcoat or change things up. And I made an announcement in one of my last messages a few weeks ago. I said, I'm done walking on eggshells. I'm just going to spit things out. And that's what the Lord wants me to do, right? And actually, if anything, overall, my views and engagement with my channel have went up since I've started to do that. So even though I might lose a couple odd subscribers here or there as I go along, as long as I'm, being in obedience to the Lord, and I'm pleasing the Lord, and I'm getting the messages out to who it needs to get out to in the time that the Lord needs them to get out. Um, and there's, people are receiving it, then I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, right? So that's that. But yeah, so anyway, so the chemicals in food, and I made a message about this a few weeks ago talking about, because Laura was telling me about how the Canadian government with Carney is happy to have tariffs and issues with the states because the Liberal government has this corrupt agenda of what they want to do to the people, and the Lord knows it. And like I said, this plan is very far-reaching and very detailed. But the Lord is stopping their hand in a lot of methods and ways. And so because of that, they've been trying to push this envelope for the last 2 or 3 years, and they even went so far as trying to switch leaders, and it still isn't happening the way that they want it to, and they're kind of dumbfounded as to how, and so they just keep trying to regroup, but the Lord is kind of laughing because he's saying, I'm the one that's stopping the hand, I'm stopping the plans, I'm the one that's pulling the strings and unraveling things, but because Carney is the furthest thing from God, and same with the Liberal Party, and they're very corrupt and immoral, they don't believe in God. So therefore they are confused because they're like, well, we're the highest in authority and command and power and charge in all of Canada. How come we can't make A, B, C, D, E, F, G happen? How come we can only make A, B, C happen and that's it? Well, that's because the Lord is in the mix, right? And so this is what I go into detail about in yesterday's word. That's why this is a follow-up, is that if man is able to do certain things like Hitler was, or like these laboratories are able to release viruses into the population, or create and grow life artificially and things like this, and the list goes on, that's because the Lord has allowed them to do that, right? But they want to do more, right? Instead of taking out or culling, as the Lord is saying, 10,000 people, they want to call 100,000 people or 500,000 people, right? Not because they have a proper mindset. It's coming from a Cain mindset, where I talked about this yesterday, how Cain took out his own brother Abel. And there was really no reason for Cain to do it other than the fact that Cain was jealous and upset and angry that God accepted Abel's sacrifice more than God accepted his. And this is one of, it's things like that where it's similar, where it comes down to just very low bottom, bare minimum reasons, okay? But initially, one of the reasons was to decrease the population because of the carbon footprint that the population was leaving 15, 20 years ago. And if you think about it, if you've lived a while like myself, you would know that they don't talk about it as much anymore, do they? But surely 5-10 years ago, you couldn't go a day without hearing about all the fears from not Mark Zuckerberg, but I can't remember. Was it Bill Gates? I don't know, I can't remember. But there were people in the media that were working closely with scientists and making it well known that they were very worried and concerned. And I remember them even going on about this originally in the 90s about all the pollution and this is why Canada switched to electric cars. This is the other thing too, is that it all connects, you guys. Canada has been trying to push this and force everybody to eventually have electric cars. And one of the reasons why they're so worried about the electric cars is because they feel that everybody in Canada is contributing too strongly to the pollution problem with their gas-emitted vehicles. But we've been having gas-emitted vehicles for the last 100 years. And, right? And so then they're doing the math and they're like, well, 1950 people had gas-powered vehicles, and today they have gas-powered vehicles. And we actually have low emission, if anything, as compared. So why is the pollution problem so bad? Oh, I know. It's because more people are driving today than they were in the 50s. Well, I know. Let's just get rid of half the population, and then we can go back to the similar population as we had in the 50s, and then we won't contribute as much, through gas-powered vehicles to the problem. Well, now that agenda isn't working out as proficiently as they thought. So now what they're doing instead is switching to forcing everybody to convert to an electric powered vehicle instead, right? And so this is the thing, is like they're very, very concerned, especially the liberal government, about the environment. Okay? And I'm not saying to not be concerned about the environment. I'm not saying that. I'm somebody who's very environmental conscious. But what I am saying is that it's not in man's hands to take the burden on of what to do with the earth. If things are going on with the earth where polar ice caps are melting and the ozone layer is thinning, that is God's intention. And if he wants to fix it, he will do so, right? He knows what he's doing. I mean, they're talking about how the earth's core has gotten a degree hotter or something like that. It has, true, but we're all still alive, right? We're not noticing that it's really adversely affecting people. But what we do see is this uptick in chemicals in the food is adversely affecting people. There's more and more ADHD and allergies and food sensitivities and things like this. So I'm confused. The government is so concerned about gas-powered vehicles and the environment, something that is God's department, is the environment and the earth, but yet man, who solely is responsible for creating breakfast cereals, will go and overload them with chemicals for children. Because who do you think the biggest consumer of breakfast cereals is? Well, it would be kids. Same with like candy and chips, overloaded with chemicals. The biggest consumer of candy and chips is children. And so this is the thing, is the Lord shakes his head because on one hand the liberal government wants to take out people, and the Lord allows it because there does need to be a thinning of the herd, so to speak, right? But then at the same time, they want to go and praise the earth and try and figure out all these ways to, bring Mother Nature into balance, so to speak, as they would say. But then they'll turn around and fill our food supply up with chemicals. And so one of the things that is polluting the earth in its own way is chemicals in the foods. So the very problem that they're saying out of the right-hand side of their mouth needs to be corrected is the very problem they're contributing to out of the left side of their mouth, right? It doesn't go both ways. And so this is the thing of it, is that there's something they can control and prevent hurting the environment with, which is the chemical uptick in foods. But instead of fixing that, they're doubling down. Whereas I know in the States, I mean, again, I'm not agreeing with all the methods and I don't know all the ins and outs, but I've heard about the Robert F. Kennedy is very concerned and talking about some of the issues that the Trump administration is addressing are things that need to be said and talked about and addressed here in Canada. But because there's been this, notice put out that Trump and his team are just the worst people on the planet and they can't do anything. I mean, they could go and give millions and billions to charity and everyone would say, oh, you gave $1 million to charity? Well, you're rich. Why didn't you give $1 billion? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lose-lose. There's nothing that he can do to appease the public. And this image has been put out in the States and Canada. It's been made out to make him look like the worst person in the world, where Canada has a big hate for him, and so does America. And at the end of the day, Canadian and American citizens have to see that whether he's the best person or not, you're bullying somebody. You're belittling and mocking and bullying somebody. How does that make you of a better person? Like, I just don't understand it, right? And so we see it with Jimmy Kimmel. When Jimmy Kimmel is sitting there belittling and bullying and mocking things, we see it as wrong and not right and inappropriate. But the everyday average American citizen and Canadian citizen are doing the exact same thing Jimmy Kimmel's doing. They're just not getting paid, and clapped for to do it, right? But I've seen this contrast of good and evil, and I've seen an uptick in it in the last 2 months specifically, where there's been a shift. And it's funny because I was talking about the shift at the 8/8 on August 8th and how they were trying to use the Lionsgate portal to create a shift, right? I talked about that in the password, and I say it that way because I'm speaking on behalf of the Wicked team, right? That's how they operate. So yeah, I first was made a word about that on August 8th, that there was a shift occurred, and it was a two-way shift where they felt like things shifted in their favor, and now here we are, a month and a half seeing the fruit of the shift they tried to create on the 8th. But what they don't realize is that God knew what was going down, and so he shifted it too. So while we may have shuffled 2 steps to the left, we also simultaneously shuffled 2 steps to the right. And it's just the difference is that God's team and God's kids aren't as loud and in your face and a blowhard as the devil's team and kids are. The devil's team and kids are in a lot of the celebrities and stuff, and I mentioned this in my word yesterday. They use a lot of the celebrity power and political power, throw their weight around, the Lord is saying. Hallelujah. They throw their weight around, whether that be money wise, physical wise, attention wise, whatever it may be, to try to get more attention. And God's kids don't do that. God's kids are humble. They're wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove type of a thing. So we're more like kind of wise, strategic behind the scenes, but we're going to come off to you as harmless as a dove. And because we're coming off as more meek and mild and harmless, like the fruits of the Holy Spirit tell us to be and grant us to be, then these blowhards that have no self-control at all, because they don't have any fruits of the Spirit, they can't control themselves. This is what I talked about a couple days ago, is a child of God will be in control of themselves and will not try to control others, okay? A child of the devil will have no control over themselves and will try to control others. They're literally two opposites. So if you want to know if somebody is truly of God or not, is that they will control themselves and not control others, okay? If somebody is flying off the handle at the mouth, whether it's online or in person, obviously, and they're threatening violence and they're, just spewing hate and going crazy and stuff, that's obviously they lack self-control, obviously, right? And then if on top of it, they go a step further where they're trying to use their feelings and words and opinions and their stance on something to try to control what somebody else does. So say, for instance, somebody blasting off online and saying all this stuff, or even Jimmy Kimmel would be a good example. Jimmy Kimmel, what he said and what he says is showing and reflecting that he has a lack of self-control. He cannot contain himself, right? How would Jimmy feel if Donald was doing to Jimmy what Jimmy's doing to Donald, right? Now, Donald, meanwhile, is getting hate 24/7, morning, noon, and night, and when he addresses the public, he's very composed. Is he not? Whether you agree with what he says or not, you like it or not, he's always well dressed, he's always well spoken, he comes off, he even throws in a couple little jokes here or there, and I mean, you got to give him, the man is a senior citizen. He's got to be 80 some, right? You got to give him some credit. And so, I find him to be a better public speaker than, say, Biden was. And people were giving Biden credit for his age, but not Trump, right? And so, despite the 24/7 onslaught of hate that Trump receives, when I've seen him address the media or the public, he always seems to be in self-control, very composed, very aware of himself, things like that, right? Whereas, like, no one's bullying Jimmy. He's a well-paid millionaire making big bucks, cracking jokes off people's backs, but yet he just flies off the handle and goes off at the mouth, right? And I talked about this in a past where I talked about these tongue slips. And that's the thing, is that whether it's physically a tongue slip, and I talked about how words were going to be what was going to be used as swords over this battle, and I was talking about that even in August, because that's what the Lord was saying. And so there's going to be, words are going to be used as swords, because I talked about how if you scramble the word swords, you get the word words, right? And so it's already started happening where people are fighting each other online, in person, and online specifically, with word trading back and forth. And Jimmy is using words as swords against Donald Trump. But notice how Donald Trump isn't really saying too much. This is the thing that I'm talking about. Same with Chosen Ones. I deal with it too, right? This is how I can relate to Donald Trump, and I know other Chosen Ones can as well, where same thing goes. It just feels like if you're in self-control, despite how much hate is thrown at you, and you maintain your composure and you try to be a humble, meek, caring person, and they try to paint me and even you, chosen one, into these corners where they put you in lose-lose situations where if you don't make yourself known, oh, you're hiding, you've given up, you've ran away and cowered, you don't have anything going on, you're lame, you're this, you're that. But then if you're front and center, oh, you want attention, oh, you're trying to put yourself out there, oh, you're trying too hard, you're desperate. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? This is the position that they're trying to purposely put the children of God / chosen ones into, where they're trying to make it like if you speak, then they bash down everything you say. If you don't speak, then they laugh and snicker and say you don't have anything to talk about. And none of the above is true. And so this is why I said already is that when you're seeing people who are bullying others, or showing a lack of self-control, and also got to watch for this whole free speech movement, because it's not that the Lord doesn't want us to speak freely. I mean, I speak freely myself on my channel. We all should be able to speak freely. I'm not saying to not do that. But we should, if we have the fruits of the Holy Spirit, we will have meekness, gentleness, mildness, kindness, and self-control, right? And so this means no matter what I go through or deal with, I'm going to continue to approach myself, address others and situations, my day-to-day life, with fruits of self-control, patience, humility, kindness, gentleness. I'm going to be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove, right? I'm going to be the poster child of what the word says to be, right? And that's how a chosen one has been moving at this time, has been moving and is moving and will keep moving, right? This is why I said it's going to become very obvious, and it's already started to play out already, as to who is a genuine child of God and who is not. Because in the past, the Jezebel spirit tried to blend in and make things really foggy and, very difficult. But like the scripture says, the wheats and tares grow together for a while until the Lord separates them. And the Lord has already separated the wheats and tares spiritually a long time ago. And now here we are. A lot of what we're seeing start to pop up since August is just the physical manifestation of the things that the Lord has already done spiritually. And this is what I said. This was something that they tried to... So this was happening spiritually in the past, and they, as in Team Devil, tried to spiritually stop this and go against the chosen ones in their individual lives a long time ago. But it didn't work out. The chosen ones surpassed and pushed forward anyhow. And because of that, they were, as the Lord told me the other day, received coronation and were basically crowned. Okay? So we have all already been crowned sons, daughters, kings, and queens in the kingdom of heaven by the Lord spiritually. And now it's time for this to start ramping up to show itself physically. And just like when it was going down spiritually, Devil's team is trying to come and thwart and delay and distract and stop this and make it appear as if it's something else. So even though Trump was sent by God, they're trying to make it look like he's of the devil, correct? This is what they do with the chosen ones, myself included, is even though you're literally 10 toes down for God, you're doing the right thing, you're saying the right thing, everything is right, they want to make it look and appear to others that as if you're of some other stock, and you're not, right? And this is why I say the proof is in the pudding, is they're going to use a lot of word salad and word scrambles, just like how I said sword is words. They're using words as swords to fight this battle. And like I said, this is like a World War III that's been playing out behind the scenes. It's not like it was obviously playing out like World War II did, right? But it's a war nonetheless. And there are people who have Hitler-like agendas where they're just as corrupt, just as foul, just as dirty, and they are going to be stopped just like he was. and they're already running into roadblocks, and they have been for a while, and they're not understanding why there's roadblocks and why they can't get away with and do things to the full tilt that they want to. And God is saying, because whether you believe in me or not, I'm the one that's doing it, because I decide if you raise your hand or set it down. I decide, you know. And this is what I talked about yesterday, is that it gets frustrating, especially for the chosen ones and the children of God, because one of the bonuses of being on God's team is that he gives you crystal clear 20/20 vision. And so you're able to see things both very clearly, both spiritually and physically. But unfortunately, we have to coexist on the planet, at this time anyway, with these other ones who don't have good vision at all. They're basically blind, actually, the Lord is saying. Hallelujah. They're spiritually and physically blind. They can't see things properly in front of them, and they can't see things beyond that properly at all either, right? And so the Lord has basically bolstered his children's vision and lessened and weakened these evil ones' vision and made them even more blind. And this has caused them to be less aware of what they're saying, who they're saying it about, what they're doing. And it's all in efforts to bring down their eventual downfall. That's why the Lord's doing it. And we're going to see it. So, like, for instance, with Jimmy Kimmel, in the past, perhaps he was a little more careful about what he said, when he said it, who he said it about, how he said it. But because the Lord is causing like a blindness and these tongue slips, he's basically exposing these people. And actually, they're exposing themselves, but it's through the power of the Lord that they're exposing themselves. He messed up and he said the wrong thing about the wrong person at the wrong time. And the Lord is showing me that even when he stepped off air, in his own head, he was thinking, why did I say that? What was I thinking? You know, usually I know to be a little more careful, right? Right, exactly. But the Lord decides. The fact that you were able to be so concise up to today, that was the Lord deciding. And the fact that you inadvertently, abruptly had a tongue slip, that was the Lord deciding. And you know what? There's going to be more to come. There's going to be more slip-ups, and it's going to be through words. Hallelujah. Here's a prophecy here. The Lord is saying there is going to be more slip-ups using words. They are going to use words as swords in written form and in spoken form, orally, but the very daggers they think they're sending out are actually one day going to, no different than how you're walking along and all of a sudden out of nowhere you trip. You know what I'm saying? I know it's happened to me. It's happened to all of us. We're out of like nowhere. You're walking on some ice, and then next thing you know, you're on your butt and you just fall. It's a slip. You slipped and fell, right? That is exactly what's going to happen to these people that are on Team Devil, that are thinking that they control things and they are in a position of power, whether it's politically or monetarily or something like that, where they're going to write the wrong thing or say the wrong thing or both, and it's going to get the attention of certain people. Now, I've talked about this before, where we're in the battle of good and evil, and so it looks like a point for God's team, and then a point for the devil's team, and then a point for God's team, and then a point for the devil's team, and then a point for God's team, and it just volleys back and forth, like badminton or tennis, back and forth, right? With each team trying to hope that the other team's ball falls on their court so they get the point. And the Lord always shows me like tit for tat, right? And so this is the tit for tat. So the tit was Jimmy speaking, foolishly, and then getting a show canceled, which was a point for God's team. And then he turned around and got his show reinstated a week later. And the only reason he got his show reinstated is because, well, the Lord's telling me that he caused a big fuss about it and threatened to sue them and do all this different stuff. And then they didn't even honestly care about him or his feelings. It was because the ratings had dropped on certain other things and stuff. And so it was all to do with money. Jimmy was concerned he'd lose money, and the broadcast companies were concerned about losing money. So they basically were concerned about their own wallets, was what did it, right? But when he got reinstated, he went on air and started to right back to making jokes and quips at Trump, like, aha, he tried to cancel me, but he couldn't, could he? And not only am I reinstated, I'm back to make jokes at his expense, da 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 da. And so it was a physical reflection of a tit versus a tat, right? 1 point God's team, 1 point devil's team, right? The tit for tat. And so it keeps going back and forth. And like I said, with Big Brother, for instance, the show started out like Julie Chen is the host, and she used to anyway, constantly talk about God and profess the fact that she was a Christian and a woman of God. And I mean, it was widely accepted. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the season's 3/4 over, and towards the end of the season, they're talking about witchcraft, sacrifices, inner sanctums, and voodoo dolls. Like, what? And so not only is it inappropriate for TV, like, where did this come from? But also, I'm confused. I thought that Julie Chen was a Christian. So wouldn't that be offensive to her? And I noticed that in the last month or so, she hasn't said anything about God or Christ. And so we had the 1 point for God's team, which was the talking publicly about Christ on air on TV on a popular show. And fast forward to post 8/8, August 8th, now here we are having them show this type of stuff lately in the last month or so, right? And talking in this opposite fashion. And so other people are talking, so 1 point for God's team originally, and now 1 point for the Devils. And other people are talking about this too, the shift that's taken place, right? It's not coming, it's already happened. And I know that it's been some time in the last month or two, and the Lord just keeps talking about 8/8, because the Team Devil tried to, I talked about that in the 8/8 word I put out, they projected out this big plan at that time. Again, this was in a spiritual way, right? But showed itself physically, to try to shift things, because God's team was in the lead and they knew it. And so in order to try to get back up on equal levels, they pushed forward this agenda on or around the 8/8 portal time that they use so much. They basically use it as like an August Halloween, like that type of a portal. And on or around that time was when this spiritual shift was pushed out, and now it's showing up physically. And the Devil's team is jumping for joy, because they're like, look, things are starting to, the fruits of our labor are showing up. And we did this on purpose because we wanted to thwart the harvest, the fall harvest that was up and coming for God's kids in the fall, right? But this is the thing, is that still, even though the devil may be doing A, B, C, D, they don't understand that the Lord is authorizing and allowing them to do A, B, C, D. If the Lord wants to shut it down, he will. And he hasn't yet. As of today, he's letting it go forward. But he's telling me that we're going, just like how we've received a point and now it looks like they're receiving a point, the tables are going to turn back on our favor, and we're going to receive a point. And it's just going to continue to volley back and forth until the Lord steps in and shuts it down, whether that takes days, weeks, months, or years, right? I mean, this is prophecy playing out. This is the thing, is this is the Lord's word playing out, because the Bible talks about things like this, the battle of good and evil. And it's happening spiritually. It has been brewing spiritually for a while, and now it's just showing itself up physically in physical methods, right? But going back to kind of like the agenda that I was talking about before, okay? So uptick the chemicals in food, they've done that. Raise the cost of living, because when the cost of living is really high, people can get into bankruptcy. And when people get into bankruptcy and they don't walk with the Lord, that can actually honestly affect some people more adversely than others, right? Some people can be more upset by that, and it can actually lead to mental illness like depression and even physical sickness because of stress and heart attacks and things like this. And then so either they develop a physical ailment like a heart condition, or cancer or disease from stress, from being trying to make ends meet and work, and or because the cost of living has went up, now they're having to work overtime, now they're getting less time to relax, right? They're having to work more days a week, later days, things like this. Or even, like I said, mom's having to go back to work early because they now have to have two income households, whereas in the 50s you only need one income household, right? And then this causes stress for mom. Then the children are stressed because they don't have their parents. There's a separation there. Now they're having to be raised by caregivers because both mom and dad have to work. And then there's the separation anxiety from mom, okay? This can cause the child to, have also some disabilities or defectiveness or whatever you want to say because of the separation from mom, which can also cause mom to have to stop breastfeeding early. Maybe mom would have, if she stayed home, would have breastfed baby for a year, but because she's got to go back to work due to high cost of living, she could only breastfeed baby for a month or two. And maybe because she's stressed out about finances, her milk dried up faster than it should have. Now the baby, instead of getting 2 to 6 months or a year of breast milk, is only getting a month's worth of breast milk, and now they're on formula. Guess what they've chock full of chemicals? Baby formula. You see how it all goes together? And now the baby has been raised on formula and without mom and dad for the last year, and now there's stress in the home because the mom is separated from her baby and she barely sees her husband because he works 24/7 to make ends meet. He's stressed out, and next thing you know, their marriage starts to unravel. Because their marriage starts to unravel, she becomes a single mother. And so now the child is coming from a broken home. And now the mom, or maybe even there was some domestic violence before separation, and the dad started to drink or do drugs, or the mom did. And now maybe the dad's abusive to the mom and the kid grows up seeing this. I know you know where I'm going. It all connects, right? It all, like I said, it starts with one thing and then it trickles down to another and another, like dominoes where they all fall together. Now the child is grown up a few years, now they're acting out in school. And now the mom has to homeschool the child or move to somewhere else to put the child in a different school. Now there's all that stress, right? And if the mom homeschools the child, how does she make ends meet? And then everyone's going to court now because now there's parental orders and dad has to pay child support and all this other stuff. And then the kid has to go back and forth between homes. Now the child is 20, and he's got issues from this, from dad or mom's substance abuse, from the fact that they were on chemical-filled formula at a young age. Then they started to, of course, eat natural food, when they were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, all the chemicals. Now the child has some sort of, disorder of some sorts when they're like 14, 15 years old. And because of that, now the child starts using drugs. And then the child ends up committing SUICIDE at the age of 18. You see? Then the parents are upset, and maybe the mom does the same because of the loss and the grief. And it could go in so many ways. I'm just saying, this is how it works. And now, through the government's corrupt agenda, they took out an entire family. They messed the child up. They, took out the mom and dad's marriage, maybe took the son out, tried to take, and then maybe 5 years later, the dad passes away from a drug addiction. And now this whole family was wiped out, all because of the government's, behind the scenes corrupt agenda of, hey, this is our plan. And then the government's happy because their plan worked out perfectly. That is what they wanted. They wanted the child to have some sort of adverse reactions from the food chemicals and additives. They wanted the family to be one of the part of the divorce statistics. They wanted there to be addiction born into the family and bred into it. And then now guess what? Now there's generational curses. Now they apply to the next generation. Even if they don't have any other kids, maybe there's a brother or sister of the mom or the dad and they have 3 kids. There's a generational curse in their bloodline now. And now that mom and dad's nieces and nephews have to carry the brunt of the generational curse. You see, this is what I'm saying, is that it's all a part of it. But the sooner that we can bring the Lord into our home, the sooner that we can, it's not going to stop us from having to eat the chemical-laden foods and things like this, but because the Lord will protect your household, He will cover you from the divorce. He will cover you from mental illness and physical illness and addictions and things like this. He will stop and prevent and shield your family, you, your husband, your wife, and your kids from going down the wrong roads. And nothing's going to be perfect, and it's hard to, because you're dodging landmines out here. And they started out with planting, 10 bombs, and you dodged those 10 bombs, so now they've went overnight and planted at 100 bombs to make it even more difficult for you to dodge and navigate, okay? This is why we need the Lord, because there's a corrupt agenda at foot. And at one time they used to plant 10 bombs, then they upticked it to 50, and people were dodging them. And who's dodging them the most successfully is the chosen ones, the children of God. And so they've all banded together to try to plant 100 bombs versus 50 to try to, to really try and get you. And so this is the thing, is the only remedy and solution, because you can't change life, you can't change the government and their agenda, you still have to coexist, and so do your children and your grandchildren, etc., is to have the Lord covering you and yours and your home. That's the only solution, right? And even then, they take it as a challenge to think, oh, okay, well, how can we try even more to go after this person? I mean, look what happened with Charlie Kirk, right? And like I said in the past word, I remember hearing about Trump talking about bringing religion back to the classroom, and then the Charlie Kirk shooting happened literally like a day or two later. And so I found that interesting. Like, I don't know if it's connected or not, but Trump was saying that, and then this happened. And this is the thing, is that the devil's team will do whatever it takes, spiritually, physically, or both, to try to prevent God from having his way. And so when God anoints and appoints his chosen ones, whether they're in the form of leaders or just everyday people like myself or you, chosen one, they try to come at us guns blazing. And if the Lord turns their guns on themselves or turns them away, then they just come back with, double ammunition. And in the meantime, they're going to try as best they can on the sidelines to make you look like the worst person on the planet. And you're not. You're actually one of the best people on the planet. And all you want to do is promote Christ, promote self-love for yourself, and promote love for others. And try to abolish this hate agenda, this corrupt hate agenda that they have underfoot and, trying to push through. And you're just trying to navigate the most healthiest ways to raise, yourself and your family and your children. And these are the very same things that the devil's kids are doing too. They're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to get married and have kids and have families and work and pay their bills. Why is it so wrong for you to do the same? The only difference between you and them is they want to hate themselves, hate you, and spread hate everywhere. And you don't want to do that. You want to do the opposite. You don't want to try and control others through your hatred. You don't want to try to be out of control because of your self-hatred. You love yourself and you love others, and because of your love for Christ and yourself and others, God rewards you with self-control and the fact that you don't try to control others through hate. If anything, you try to control them through love, right? And love is truth. When myself and others spread the true message of Christ and the truth, that is love. To try to take somebody who's saying, hey, here's a thought, maybe don't take a drug when pregnant. I mean, if you have to, you have to, but if you can help it, try not to do it. I mean, to me, that's common sense. I mean, I had 2 pregnancies, 2 babies. My doctor told me the same thing, is that basically to take Tylenol if I was feeling really bad with headaches, because one of the symptoms and whatnot of pregnancy is headaches, right? And so I would get migraines, and I knew I couldn't take ibuprofen, and the doctor told me I could take Tylenol, yes, but try to not, like maybe take 1 pill instead of 2. If you get 5 headaches a month, maybe take pain pill 1 or 2 of them. And so why was the doctor telling me this 15 years ago, A-okay, but when Trump mentions it, it's an issue? And so this is what I'm saying. It's because they want to hate him specifically. And so because of that, there's nothing that he can say or do, good or bad. Meanwhile, over here in Canada, we have a very corrupt government and leader and agenda at foot, and people are just A-okay with it. It's great, it's fine. And so I'm confused. Why does the States have a leader who is trying to bring religion back to not high school, but well, just school in general, recommending not to take Tylenol when pregnant, and even has whoever it is in RFK there who's trying to suggest that we need to clean up this and clean up that, and at least they're addressing autism. Like, I'll be honest, my son is autistic, okay? My son is autistic. He was diagnosed at the age of 3. And I don't feel that it's the Tylenol I took that gave him the autism, no. But what I do feel like either caused it in the first place, or if not contributed to it greatly, is food, okay? Either the foods I conceived while either the foods I consumed while I was pregnant with him, or through the foods that he's consumed since he was a baby, okay? Because he was on formula for a little while. I was breastfeeding, but I had to supplement with formula because he was he was hungrier than the amount I was making. I had no other choice. It was that or him starve. And he was drinking formula, and we all know it's chock full of chemicals. So I blame, if there's blame to throw around, if anything, I would blame the food supply that's been in cycle for the last 10, 20, 30 years, in particular the last 10, and the fact that I had no other choice, because I was pregnant, I had to eat, and so did he, to consume these chemical foods that the Liberal government pushed into the food supply 15 years ago, 5 years before I got pregnant, right? And then, if not that, then the foods he consumed when he was a baby, 1, 2 years old. And we can't say I'm wrong. And, I agree that you should not take any chemicals when you're pregnant, not in Tylenol, yes, but even in your own food. And what are you taking more often when you're pregnant, Tylenol, or are you eating? Well, a pregnant woman typically eats 3 times a day, if not more, but she only takes Tylenol maybe once a week or every 2 weeks. So technically she's taking in more chemicals on the daily by consuming foods that are passing the placenta to the baby while she's pregnant by the food supply than she is by the Tylenol. And so, the governments need to really look at the food supply, and the only government out of the two, Canada versus States, that I see doing that is the American government. Canada's not even doing it at all. And I put out the word actually a few weeks ago that the Lord gave me, was talking about Canada's corrupt agenda, right? And if you're a Canadian citizen, you'll know what I'm talking about, is that you're getting half the size of food or amount that you got previously for twice the cost, and it's 3 times as full of chemicals as it was before. And on top of that, there's no health care provided. I understand that the healthcare system is different in the States than in Canada, but in Canada we have free healthcare here, which yay, free healthcare, but it's not yay when there's no doctors. There's no doctors available, and I've heard story after story after story after story of people unfortunately passing away in the emergency room. They're right there at the hospital, 5 feet from a doctor, and they're passing away in the emergency room because they have to sit in the emergency room for 10, 12 hours and not see a doctor when they're actually having a serious medical problem. And they just shrug and go, oh well. And so this is what I mean, is that it's all a part of the agenda. And then if you're consuming, right, you're drinking and drugging as a result of the stress and pressure and everything and depression, etc., then it increases the chance of getting into a car accident and either taking yourself out or innocent family or other person, And so this is the thing, it all connects. Raising up the higher cost of living causes more stress, right? Which causes more physical health ailments, but then cut off the doctors so that there's no doctors to distribute medications that could help, or surgeries or anything like that, so that the person actually gets sicker or gets worse. Then if they get cancer, which they say is one of the leading causes of death in Canada, then just recommend chemotherapy and radiation for them, which in and of itself, chemotherapy and radiation kills the body. So sometimes it kills the cancer and sometimes it doesn't. So they're actually, the supposed cure or treatment is actually sometimes the poison, right? Which does you worse. And then if all you dodge those landmines, then perhaps the stress gets to you because you never get any time off or to relax or anything. And then you end up developing an alcohol or drug dependency, which can take you out in and of itself. And if you bypass that, then perhaps your toxic behavior as a result will trickle on to your surrounding people around you, your children, your spouse, your family members, your friends, etc. And then they can pick up and take off some of the burden that you're pushing on them. And that manifests itself on them through physical and mental illness. And then it's like a domino line where you knock one down and it knocks the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one, until they all fall down. And so that is a way that the government can stack up 100 dominoes, push one down, and take out all 99. And you do that over and over and over again for year after year after year until basically you've, as the Lord says, culled so many people, right? And like I said, the Lord has allowed it to a point because it's also playing out this battle of good and evil that the Bible talks about, right? But we also had to thin the herd and have survival of the fittest and things like that. And when the Lord says your time is up, your time is up. Whether somebody pushes your hand physically or not, the Lord decides when our expiration dates are, each and every one of us. And we're not going to go before that time. It doesn't matter who does what. And then, but the difference is that when the children of God do go, because that's one thing we all have in common, is that we do have a D-Day. Once we do go, we go to heaven. Right? So there's really no losing when it comes to being in the body of Christ, and the devil's kids know it. This is why they want to come at us so bad, because they know that we're in a favorable position that they're not in. And because of that, this is why they want to spew hatred and bully and mock and all this type of stuff and try and ruin and destroy your time on earth, because they know that when you go, you're going somewhere that when they go, they're not. And because of that, God has an agenda. The Bible talks about this, is to save souls, right? And he sends his kids like myself and others to do this mission to save souls. And he's even having Trump trying to do it too. But we're met with all this backlash and hatred, right, in return. And all we're trying to do is save people so that when they do go, they could maybe go to the same place we're going to go when we go. So please explain. They're mad and upset that we're going to go somewhere they can't go. But yet here we are being so loving, caring, and kind because we're full of the fruits of the Holy Spirit that we want to help them go to the place that we're going to go. And they want to take us out for that and try and ruin us in the process. So basically the only way that you can be accepted and left alone and high-fived and loved and treated with respect is if you work for the devil. That's the only way. If you work for God and you love yourself and you love others and you even have love for these adversaries and you want to help them, right? They don't care. They put you in lose-lose situations where if you talk to them, they're going to gossip about you and belittle you and mock you and put down everything that you've told them or said to them, whether it's to your face or behind your back. But if you don't talk to them, then they're still going to do it anyways. They're going to go gossip about you and make you look like the worst person on the planet to everybody else. So whether you're in their face or out of their face, that's what they're going to do. And that's exactly what's happening with Trump, is that if he hears research data from wherever he got it that says, hey, maybe don't take Tylenol when pregnant, even though in my opinion that's a positive statement, that's trying to be helpful and beneficial, that's knocked down, that's laughed at, that's made a big mockery foolery of. But then if he had the data and people found out he had the data and he never talked about it, he never announced it, and he kept it to himself for fear of being mocked and bullied and belittled like he ultimately was, then they turn around and mock and bully and belittle him for not releasing the information and talk about how he's such a terrible person because he knew this and didn't let people know. Don't you see? Lose, right? And so this is what's happening, okay? And so yes, there has been a shift and it's in your face. Like I mentioned, the password, it was going to be, it's in your face and it's obvious. And, this is still an unfolding process. This is kind of came up and cropped up out of nowhere, but the Lord doesn't just leave us here trying to navigate stormy waters, right? He comes through for us every time. It's not a matter of if, but when. And so it's going to, the Lord just keeps showing me the pendulum going from one end, yes, but back to the other. And so it goes back and forth. So whether, God's kids are up one week and devil's kids are down the next, it'll just go back and forth because it's the battles of good and evil being played out spiritually and physically as we speak, right? And this is nothing new for chosen ones. And it's nothing new for Trump. This is why he has a thick skin. He's unbothered. And that's something else, by the way, that bothers the devil's kids about God's kids, is that no matter how much they do, we're unbothered by it. No matter how many monologues and stand-up routines Jimmy Kimmel does about Donald Trump, he doesn't care. He's unfazed. He shows up next week at the podium and makes yet another speech. And it's because Jimmy Kimmel wants Donald Trump to lose his composure and his cool. And it's not going to happen because it's a fruit of the Holy Spirit, what happens when you're a child of God, chosen one, right? And because Donald Trump is trying to do good by trying to talk about autism and address it instead of keep sweeping it under the rug like they do in Canada, because that's what they do here in Canada. I would know. My son has been diagnosed, right, and has been for years. Over here in Canada, there's no support. They don't care. They don't talk about it. They brush it under a rug, even though I guess the rates are 1 in 20 kids now have it. And it's just by 5 years from now, it's going to be 1 in 10. The rates are just increasing at an explosion rate. But here in Canada, they don't care. They don't talk about it. They don't address it. They're unbothered by it. They just sweep it under a rug and pretend it doesn't exist. And then meanwhile, continue to, fill the food supply with more and more and more chemicals and raise the cost of living more and more, so that parents who have children with autism struggle more and more to properly and appropriately support that child. So it is what it is, right? But the Lord has me and my family protected, and I know he has you protected as well, chosen one, right? And he also has protection for like Trump and others. And this is the very thing that bothers these kids, devil's kids on the devil's team, right? And, so we'll see how it goes, right? But this was kind of the part 2 follow-up of the word I put out yesterday. And as always, if the Lord leads me to follow this message up with anything else, I will, okay? And I believe it's just going to we're going to see things I don't know how to word it, this is just the beginning, okay? Whether it goes favorably for the devil's team or God's team, this is just the beginning, and we're going to start to see over the fall and winter season, and I had said this in my past prophecy a few weeks ago, we're going to see more of an increase of just basically kind of what we're already seeing. I can't think of the perfect word at this time, and the Lord's not really helping me, so maybe it's something that's still under construction. So on that note, I'm going to leave it here, but the Lord's just saying it's just the beginning. So anyways, I'll be back when the Lord leads me to with anything else. As always, those who have ears to hear will hear, and you'll understand this message perfectly in its entirety from beginning to end. If for some reason you're offended or you don't understand the message, it was not for you at all, or it was not for you at this time. And as always, I'm not here to try to bother anyone or upset anyone. That's not what I do. I am sent as a mouthpiece on behalf of the Lord, and I speak what the Lord asks me to, whether that comes off as good, bad, ugly, sweet, or sour. That's what I'm sent to do, and my ultimate obedience and allegiance is pledged to the Lord and the Lord only, so I will say what he asks me to say and how he asks me to say it and when he asks me to say it, etc., etc. So if there's issues with that, I apologize for your feelings, but take it up with the Lord, right? Because he's who sent me. And as always, take every message back to the Lord, mine and others as well. So as always, I hope this finds you well. Take care, and God bless.